Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and today we have with us Bradley Zylstra. I believe I got your name wrong. How are you doing? I got your name right.
Yeah, you got my name right. Thank you very much, Payman. Glad to be here.
Bradley, you and I met because you're considering running for the PPC, but beyond that, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Well, I am a third generation Dutch Canadian. Both my parents grew up on farms. Was raised very blue collar in the church. Kind of grew up to be a little bit of a countercultural delinquent. We got turned around after a while. I have three kids. I'm separated for about 10 years now and had some ups and downs with bit of homelessness, not due to anything other than just life gets hard, and sometimes when you get knocked down, it's difficult to get back up. But I've been in the same place now for 4 years. I've been trying to make a career of cabinetry and trying to get enough money to get my firearms license to put my gunsmithing diploma to use.
Yeah, I when I got my firearms license, the when the Liberals announced the gun grab,
Yeah,
I
I wish I
I
could.
was like the last seat in the class that I had to uh, like the morning after I got my lesson, and I got my license 3 days later.
Oh, I should have done it when I had a chance a couple of years ago, but there will be another chance coming up.
I want to pick up on something you said. You grew up on a farm?
I didn't grow up on a farm. My parents did. My mom on a dairy farm up in Thunder Bay, and my dad on a produce farm down in Reese's Corner, just outside Wyoming, near Sarnia.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in London, Ontario. Lived abroad. Lived in Muskoka for probably a total of 8 years. I've lived out in Calgary. I worked for Teen Challenge Alberta out there. After finishing the Teen Challenge program in Sault Ste. Marie, I've lived in Strathroy, Ontario, but mainly born and raised, and for the most part lived in and around London. So it's not the greatest city, but we're trying to fix that.
No, it's a fine city. I usually ask this question near the end of the episode, but what do you think's changed in Canada over I don't know how old you are over the last 30, 40, 50 years?
I'm 35 years old, and I can tell you probably in the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of Canadians shift from outdoor stuff and shift their attitudes to be a bit more, I guess, politically correct in a lot of regards. Almost like there's a fear of saying the wrong thing to people and making them upset. And it's been this slow degradation, I think, personally, where, everybody gets so moralized and emotional about certain issues that really aren't issues whatsoever. And there wasn't really a problem to begin with. So, I mean, that was a little bit of a tangent there. There's a lot to digest, but I mean, we've gotten soft in Canada. We're not we're not the same people that were proud of what we did in like World War I and World War II. We've kind of lost that pride in ourselves, and we've just become bleeding hearts. And
You know, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that's where I was leaving it. Sorry.
Bradley, the reason I ask that, I was born in Iran. I came to Canada in '89, and I'm sort of in the same boat. So I kind of grew up in the suburbs, the cities, but my parents, they grew up on a farm. And like the one thing I noticed that was different was with them, their parents would work their ass off. So my grandparents, and they would buy more farmland, and then when the kids got married, they would gift a portion of the farmland, and the kid would have to do the same thing, like
That's
work
all.
their ass off, get more farmland, give it to the kids.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Canada now, we're like debt slaves because we've reversed it, where everyone has to go get a mortgage. So
And that's just it. Like you can't just like save your money anymore and do anything. I mean, heck, I like to browse properties. It's something I've liked to do for a long time. And like I was looking down in Ohio, and like you can get a half acre property for $30,000 with $500 down, and a mortgage on it of like less than $400 a month. And then all you'd have to do is finance a prefab home, and you're sitting there laughing, paying about, you know, 1,100 to $1,200 a month. Like that's pretty ridiculous. And then here I look at properties, and like you're looking at like sometimes 80 to $110,000 just for a .2 acre property, like depending on location. It's quite ridiculous. I wish we could afford to like even mortgages right now. You got people talking about like their mortgage is $3,500 a month. Like what are you doing? Why is this happening?
Yeah, the prices are out of control. One of my friends, he contacted me. He goes, do you know if I can get a cheap container home? You know what container homes are, the
Yep,
cargo containers. So that, convert it to a home, but it's not like you can do that for $30,000, $40,000. Like the property alone is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
absolutely. It's ridiculous. But I mean, to be fair, we have been completely inundated with, millions upon millions of new residents before we even prepared any infrastructure or housing to accommodate them.
That kind of ties into my next. Well, it was supposed to be our first question. What do you think's going on with housing? Like,
Honestly, just that. Like there are a lot of buildings available, like even retail buildings with all the like work from home kind of stuff, and people not wanting to come back to the office. Pardon me. Um, but we do have space. It's just not being converted by the people who own the buildings. But at the same time, all the space that was available that was originally zoned for residential or other purposes or just unused land, we have no houses. We have many abandoned properties and buildings that are owned by developers that have had nothing done with them. And we're overcrowding with our population. I mean, the answer is pretty simple about what's good. When there's not it's supply and demand. When there's not enough supply, the demand is higher, and especially here in Ontario with a lot of the rental regulations um, gone now, and our landlord tenant board just honestly, it's non-functional at this point. It's derelict. All the prices keep going up with the demand. Meanwhile, there's no real solutions being offered, and the ones that are temporary, like these small little tiny, I wouldn't even say they're tiny homes. They're just like little cubicles in a parking lot. Like out in Peterborough, they're spending exponential amounts of money on these things for no reason, and they're trying to offer us smaller homes for larger prices. It's almost the same thing as what's going on with our food with shrinkflation. It's again, it's a bit of a tangent, but it's my whole train of thought. There's so much to cover there, and so many small little adding factors to why housing is the way it is. And even now, I mean, here in London, construction's dead right now because nobody can afford to build. Nobody can afford to buy the materials. It's dead. Construction is dead in the water for first time in a good while here in London. So we're
well,
not building
let's
homes. Pardon?
let's work backwards from that.
Yes. Sorry.
Why? No, no, no. You mentioned three things in there. Too many people coming in.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's too expensive to build, and you didn't mention this, but I was going to ask you regulations, what impact it has. Why is it so expensive for developers to build?
Uh, Honestly, the permit process and getting all of the zoning and all the permits and all the red tape, it's very, very costly, and it takes so long with so much bureaucracy, and unnecessary hoops to go through. just to get like even something simple done.
Do
And
you?
materials
I'm
are,
putting you.
sorry,
Well,
and
yeah, the
materials.
materials, yeah, but I'm putting you on the spot here. But do you have like a concrete example of how regulations are out of control?
Uh, I don't have all the details, but from my father being in the construction trade now, like he has his own landscaping and construction business right now. Anytime he has to build a new home, it's a nightmare for him just to go through like, oh well, permitting to get the to have the house this big, permitting to have the porch be this way, permitting for the deck, permitting for the boathouses, permitting for this, that. You have to go through so much red tape to get the whole final design. Then you got to get an engineer. You got to spend money on that. Then you got to get a building inspector through multiple stages of the build, depending on what you're doing, to or engineer, depending on what you're doing. Always have to have building inspector, but I mean, it's a lengthy process, and sometimes even to get a project started, it can take years.
Again, I put you on the spot there, so sorry, but
No.
I'll give you one example, a concrete example. Someone I know, they have a property. It's quite large. I don't know, like half an acre, a quarter of an acre, and it doesn't make sense price point to build a house on it. So they're trying to subdivide it into three plots so that they can build three homes, so they can rent it out to three families. And the city is making them go through so many hoops, like forest fire hazard, get all this soil testing,
Yep.
and they tell you you have to do it. So you go do it and you come back and they tell you to fix it. And then you fix it and they tell you you got to go do this other one. And it's like, it's like you're the ones that are saying that there's a housing shortage. Let me build the gosh darn house.
Right. And I mean, this is more speculation, but I mean, like talking about like money and permitting and whatnot. And it, it, here in London, I know that last year, Liberal government gave us a whole bunch of money to get the process going for a lot of developments that have been waiting for a long time, and all of them just got like in the last year, I'd say, just rushed completely. And my speculation is a lot of that money went towards the permitting and having to go back and adjust the plan and like get somebody else to do. It's so costly because there's so many like dumb little steps that are completely unnecessary. Just like, hey, let me build it, get the building inspector in there, and then make sure everything's up to code, and that's it. Like, hey, just let me build on the property. it, it'd be a lot easier. But they want their
So
money.
let's
They want their money. A lot of it is like there's municipal permitting, there's some provincial permitting, there's conservation permitting, there's federal permitting probably now or in the works. Like, man, depending on what you're doing, they just want you to pay, and they just want to inundate you with like, okay, you got this step, this step, this step, this step, and all these people are getting paid. So they're making jobs for nothing.
yeah, it's job creation. They
But it's unnecessary job creation. It's more of a hindrance on a lot of other things and doesn't really do anything positive.
I'm starting to look at it as the reallocation of wealth. Like they're just moving money around from productive developers to unproductive bureaucrats.
Yeah, that I'd be right there with you in saying that.
Okay, why don't we tackle the other part of your answer, which was so you answered the first two parts, regulations and cost of building. But what about the immigration essentially? Like what is the underlying argument in support of mass immigration?
I don't think bleeding hearts. Like, oh, we feel bad for these people, and we're Canada, and we're known to help people. Like, it's unrealistic. We have to look at the other factors and what it's going to impact, right? Because it's not just impacting housing; it's impacting the job markets entirely. Like finding a job right now, I've been off comp for this is month 5 now, and honestly, trying to find a job is a bleeding nightmare. Like you got to go through so many hoops just to find one of them, and so it really is wealth redistribution, and it's not even necessarily permanent Canadian residents either. It's other people
Um,
getting our money.
can you tell us? You told me you're. I called you a carpenter, but you said you're a cabinet maker. Or what do you
Yes.
do?
Cabinetry is, I mean, you basically learn all about like wood grain. You get even into a little bit of like learning about trees themselves. So you learn kind of, other than, the cutting down the tree process, you learn from milling from rough material all the way through to building, like making beautiful kitchens and installing them in people's homes. You learn different factors and processes for building furniture as well. Even covers basic framing. Yeah, there's a lot to cabinetry, but mostly what I have done is closet installation and building beautiful kitchens for people. I say that they're beautiful, but I really hope they are. But that's processing from again like large panel boards or even solid wood boards, processing them into pieces, assembling them into the boxes, and then putting them up. You learn to do the crown molding on all the trim. It's rather extensive. It was 9 month course at North American Trade School, and it was almost all hands on. We'd have a test once a week, but we were down in the shop learning hands on how to process everything and use every tool we could.
Can I ask you? This might be an invasive question, but that 9 month course,
Yes.
uh, how much did you pay for that? I'm trying to get a sense of your ROI. If you compare trades with like going to a 4 year university program, how
Twelve
long did it
thousand
take you to
dollars.
pay back that
Uh,
course fee?
$12,000, and I finished in 2021, and I have. It's been a rough couple years with some medical issues with my neck, but I've paid it down to about 9,500. So it's not too bad. It's pretty easy. I mean, $12,000, $100 payments every month, so it's not too bad.
Okay. And are you what do you call it? Like you're self-employed?
Currently, I am unemployed. But that's the thing. People can advertise, and the ads will be up for months and months and months. And from my understanding, what I've heard through other people is that the reason for that is they're taking temporary foreign workers so that they have to pay less and pay less in taxes. So they keep the job posting out, making it look like, hey, we need more people, but they're working everybody they have to the bone, and they don't want to hire anybody else because it's less efficient.
How is it that a temporary foreign worker is cheaper, and how is it that they pay less taxes?
Uh, Apparently, businesses get tax breaks for having temporary foreign workers. I know this from farming, growing up around farms and whatnot, talking to local farmers. First job was actually baling hay with my grandfather. So I learned a little bit about that, and they don't have to pay temporary foreign workers as much money as they do a permanent resident. It's not, they
Um,
don't legally even have to pay that. And foreign workers are usually okay, like, okay, that guy wants to work for $18 an hour, I'll work for 12.
let's tighten up some of the language. Temporary foreign worker is somebody who gets a visa that allows them to work in the country, whereas a permanent resident is a path to
It's
citizenship.
somebody who has their permanent residency card or was born here. Like
Okay.
somebody who went through the immigration process and actually became a citizen of Canada.
I've noticed there's a lot of them actually. I'm in Whistler right now. Whistler,
Mm.
British Columbia is a resort town, and there's a lot of people. I was talking to the barber yesterday. She's from way. Isle of Wight in the UK. And I was like, why did you like why did you come all the way to Canada to cut hair? But I guess it's just like fun for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there are a lot of like residents, but it was a very lengthy process for them. Like I've worked with a guy from Trinidad and Tobago. Like, he was probably one of the best guys I've ever worked with. Love that guy. He's been here for like 20 years. But that's the thing. Like they're citizens. They're Canadian. They came here to become Canadian. Meanwhile, and I mean this may come across a little insensitive and politically incorrect, but I mean, a lot of the people that have come over, I'd say probably in the last 10 years, are apparently there's still Syrian refugees that have been on the, you know, refugee program from the government for like 5 years now. And they haven't decided to become a permanent resident. They haven't decided to get their Canadian citizenship. So I mean, it's back and forth. I love all the people that came here to be Canadian, and there are a lot more than you think, and they actually see the same problems we all do. They didn't come here to, have their tax dollars forked out towards foreign countries. They came here for the Canadian dream, right? Close enough to American dream, but not quite. A little bit different. You know what I mean?
American light.
Yeah. Although I think we might be getting to a point where we might need a little bit more America in our lives here.
Yeah, I get that sweet, sweet Second Amendment up here.
Yes, please. Please.
Bradley, let's. So, my main question, you're running for the PPC. I asked you this on the phone. Why didn't you run for the Conservatives? It's just a lot easier.
It is a lot easier, but I'll be honest. I grew up. I turned very left leaning despite my very conservative family. Um, I was more of an NDP guy, like Jack Layton was my guy, but I was too young to vote for him, and he passed by the time I was old enough. So I just voted NDP twice before Jagmeet Singh. But I never liked the Conservatives. I found them, especially Harper. It was mainly Harper that I really didn't like. He always seemed like a snake when you saw him in a press conference or up on stage or at the podium. And it didn't seem to me like the Conservatives were living up to their name. They weren't conserving anything but money and business. That was it. That was the only thing they were really conserving. There was, I mean, back in 2012-ish, I remember one of the second largest oil sands in Canada got sold off to a Chinese corporation that was directly tied to CCP. So, I mean, that to me wasn't very conservative. That was one of our major resources, probably our biggest resource here in Canada besides wood. We sold it to a foreign entity that isn't an ally, even, and is off and on an enemy. And to me, that really stuck out as a bit slimy. I also remember bills C-51 through C-59. Those were some interesting bills from my memory. I haven't looked at them intimately recently, but then there was also Bill C-30 around that time. And it just gave me a really bad taste for the Conservatives. And I got a little bit hopeful with Poilievre, but the more he got right going into it, after he got the leadership of the Conservative Party, I'd say probably in the last 8 to 10 months, you kind of start to see him get a little bit more cocky and less descriptive with his language and more about the slogan than the solution. And it really, really turned me off. Not to mention all the bills that the Conservatives in the House have been supporting. And I mean, not all Conservatives, like politicians, are bad people. Some of them are just naive and getting drug along by their heartstrings. But I personally would rather, once I really started to do some more research and actually get to know more about the PPC, I really, really got a sense that, like, if there is any party to support, any party that actually gives a flying hoot about us, you know, and that it's PPC, and that was evident. I mean, I missed the Freedom Convoy. I wanted to join, but unfortunately, I had a few of my own personal things going on. But seeing Maxime Bernier, also like the Freedom Convoy, the Maxime Bernier standing up, fighting with the people, shouting from the rooftops against the vaccine mandates, like that's a leader. He's down in there with the people. You don't see Poilievre doing that. He does this little photo op, like, "Hey, how are you? I'm here for 10 minutes and then I'm gone." You know, like, eat the apple. It's it, yeah, PPC is very genuine. I'm finding, because I've talked to a couple of people that were or are candidates currently, other than yourself. I've talked to Rene DeVries and I've talked to Mike McMullen. And honestly, getting to know some people within the PPC community, it's just like, man, try to talk to conservatives about stuff like this, and I'm just an idiot. Like, they just come at me like I don't know what I'm talking about. So, and like, that's even with my family. My mom, and my stepfather are very happy and proud that I'm doing what I'm doing and trying to fight with PPC to take our country back. But yeah, conservatives, I think, have very much lost their way. They're not conservative anymore.
There's your bumper sticker. Not conservative anymore.
Yeah. When are the conservatives conserving? Yeah, I could make 1,000,001 bumper stickers out of 1,000,001 things.
Bradley, Jack Layton, he's a little bit before my time. I've heard a lot of people say what you've said. They supported the NDP up until Layton. Then they abandoned it. What was it? What was Jack Layton's message or vision?
From what I remember, because I mean, a lot of it is just remembering back. But from what I remember, I liked his social programs. He wanted to do things that would actually help the poor and impoverished get out. And he wanted to, but conversely, I can understand why people didn't like Jack Layton. It's because he wasn't necessarily about the corporations. He was more about the smaller businesses. From what I remember, I could be very, very wrong about this. But he wanted to support more small business and the little guy instead of, the richer folk. Wanted to bring back the middle class and keep the middle class.
It seems like the PPC is kind of taken over that, because the NDP and the unions, I don't see them supporting the working class.
No, oh heck no. That's honestly, like, again, didn't really do a whole lot of research, but hearing Jagmeet, like, even during his campaign, was really what turned me off of NDP. It wasn't about anybody. It was about Jagmeet Singh. It was about the NDP only. It was about the government, not the people. And it was a very, very hokey, like, here, we're gonna tell you, we're gonna do the bare minimum, and we're gonna try and get you hyped about it. And they've lost their way. So all the major parties have really lost their way. I mean, even the Liberal Party, they're if, again, my memory is terrible and I really got to do some more research. I might need some help with that. But, like, if I remember, like, Sir Wilberforce, he was representative of more like the liberal ideal, the freeing of the slaves, and had a huge hand in keeping Canada independent. Well, Canada as part of the Commonwealth, rather, but independently part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, things are going turning upside down. Like the liberals aren't liberal, the conservatives aren't conservatives.
No, the liberals are honestly social, not nationalist, but they're definitely socialist. They're very verging on similar ideals as the Nazis, really, especially Bill C-63. Anything I deem as hate speech, and you can go to jail. And it doesn't matter if it happened before this bill came forward. I'm probably going to go to jail. I'll be honest. I've said some things online that are still there.
That bill, it's not hasn't been passed into law yet, correct?
uh, from what I've seen recently in the news, it looks like it has. And even looking at the Parliament website where you can see all the different bills and whatnot, it looks like it's passed, just the same way that C-30 did.
I the reason I say that is Elon Musk and Alex Jones tweeted about it yesterday, and I was like, "Well, I guess it passed." And then I went on the House of Commons website, and it didn't pass.
Hmm.
So I don't know what's
I
going
think there's a
on.
lot of conflicting everything right now. I think it's waiting
Yeah.
to pass, but we'll see how that goes, and hopefully it doesn't, because I think sounds bad, but I think a lot of PPC and conservatives are going to be in prison.
I was talking to Leighton Gray. He's a lawyer out of Alberta, and he said that part of this might be the Liberal Party strategy, where they know they're not going to win, but at least they can jail some of the conservative MPs, or at least intimidate them or tarnish their image.
Well, honestly, that would be a smart tactic. Like I'm not a politician or a strategist or anything. Like I don't have time in the military learning that. But I mean, to me, yeah, that would make sense to do that if I was sitting there and hoping to win. If I was a different person, maybe.
It's probably a chapter in Sun Tzu's Art of War of defeat your enemy by censoring everything,
Yeah,
throwing
I
him
think
in
that's
jail.
more Stalin and Hitler.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Defeat the
Um,
opposition by silencing the opposition.
yeah, liquidate them.
Yeah.
Bradley, here's a tough question. What do you think where would the PPC need to work harder, fix things? Like where are they're not where are they failing?
Honestly, I don't see the PPC really failing anywhere. It's just this whole argument for people like, I'd vote for them if they had a seat. If you vote for them, they'll get a seat. That's the thing. If you don't vote for them, they don't get the seat. So if you're expecting them to magically, poof, make a seat out of nowhere in the House of Commons that's just for PPC, like that, people don't seem to understand how much their vote matters, and they're just too afraid. They're like, well, if I don't vote Pierre, then the liberals are going to win. And if you've looked at the polls, that is simply not true. You could have it split right down the middle, like what the conservatives have right now. You could take half of that, give it to the PPC, and the liberals will still not even have a chance. People aren't seeing that. Vote with your heart. Vote with your brain. Don't just sit there and vote because you're scared.
This really bothers me. Not that they won't vote for the PPC, but when people tell me that they're they're afraid to vote anything other than conservative because Trudeau might get in, that's indicative of a far bigger problem in society.
Oh yeah, that it absolutely is. I mean, because it just keeps a two-party system going on, which we've been doing for a while. Like, oh, liberals screwed something up, let's vote conservative. Oh, conservatives screwed up, let's vote liberal. Oh, they screwed. It's this back and forth, and it goes nowhere. It's insanity. I've posted about it. I know Max has posted about it. I mean, I think we've all posted about it. Like voting in a circle isn't voting, man. It's just playing along to the exact game they want. You're not giving yourself free choice. right? You're limiting yourself to what they tell you the limitations are.
You said like voting in a circle. That's kind of like the Einstein quote of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Absolutely. So how about we do something different? We vote PPC. We actually get a proper leader in that actually cares and has actually proven he cares by being right down on the ground with us, fighting for the same things we want. So yeah, it's about time that people just wake up. Honestly, I really hope that there is somebody out there that's willing to, you know, just blow the whole house wide open and expose the bull crap on both sides. I cannot wait. It would be the most vindicating thing in the world to watch that happen.
I heard a story from this guy, American. He said that during World War II, after World War II, it was very common for soldiers just to bring guns of the enemies that they killed back with them as souvenirs.
Yes.
That would be a virtual impossibility today with all of the regulations.
Well,
What?
that and I believe back like in the war on terror, I think UN banned the taking of what they deem war trophies. So you're
That's
not allowed.
guns. I thought war trophies was like the skull of your fallen enemy.
No, 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 no. War trophies is anything from guns, pieces of kit, pieces of uniform, cap badges, patches.
So Bradley, where were we? We were talking about the UN banning taking war trophies.
Yes, yeah. So the UN banned war trophies because uh, I don't know. Some people got up in arms about like, oh, they're taking these things that should just go back to the family, and it's like, I don't know. It's not how war works, man.
Yeah, they have so many laws now, and I think government. I say it's kind of like a black hole. Once
Yeah,
once it hits critical mass of your tax dollars, like everything just keeps falling into it and wants to grow.
yeah.
And you mentioned the UN. I was reading up on this in 1971. I believe they changed the Geneva Conventions governing war.
Mm.
Basically, what they did is they made it so that terrorists legally are allowed to hide among civilian populations,
It
which
would.
is now we have this issue with Hamas in Israel.
I know, and everybody's up in arms, like, oh, the poor Gazans, the poor Gazans. Like, um, eh, sorry, but FAFO, F around, find out.
Yeah.
And they've been effing around for a long time. Like, how would you how would you respond to constant threat of being bombarded by garbage missiles with no guidance systems? Right? Like, how would you feel? Would you just sit there after somebody came in and let's take for example if Detroit decided to launch a bunch of bombs, come in and rape a bunch of people from Windsor. How do you think Canada would respond? We did the exact same thing. We'd level Detroit if we could, right? Like, if you're gonna do something like that's the thing. So many people don't understand the nuances of war or the nuances of what goes into a conflict and how it is waged. It's very intricate, and there's so many politics and theocrat uh, like conflicting religions and whatnot, right? And everyone's like, oh, Israel is a bunch of racists, blah blah blah. They're just like the Nazis. Meanwhile, like before all this started, how many Arab Muslims and even some Gazans and Jordanians were living in Israel compared to how many Israelis or Jewish people were living in all the countries around them, right? There was none, no Jews in the countries around them. And people are all up in arms about like the Jews who let the Arabs live there and effectively take control of the Temple Mount, which is like one of the most holy sites in Judaism and Christianity as well. And they're like, Arabs can control that. We'll be peaceful with them as long as we can use it, right? Like, okay, some of what the IDF and some of the more recent strikes that have happened are a little questionable on the IDF end, but I mean, at the same time, the bad guy is the bad guy in the war. The provocateur and the provoked is what this is, and everybody's sitting there cheering for the provocateur. Meanwhile, the provoked is sitting there like, why does the world hate me all of a sudden?
You know, when Hamas, when this happened, I think it was October 7th.
Yep.
When Hamas went in, I was like, what the hell are they doing? Like, Israel is just going to steamroll over them. And I couldn't figure it out
Yeah.
because it never occurred to me that how quickly people could be whipped up into a frenzy to forget the fact that 1,000+ people were slaughtered.
And
And
more so than just slaughtered, like horrendous things happening.
yeah, no. But my point is like people completely forgot that. They put that aside and they started sympathizing with Hamas. Like this almost happened overnight.
Oh, I know.
And then it clicked. I'm like, oh, I guess Hamas was right and I was wrong. Like they have international public support now.
It's wild to me that international public support for a terrorist organization. Could you imagine, like back in 20, like back after 9/11 and whatnot, like could you imagine if people started cheering for like the Iraqi and the Afghani and like ISIS? Could you imagine that? Like that would never happen. But again, we've been so moralized and the heartstrings have been tugged. Like, look at these poor people. They have just this tiny little area to live in. And oh, the big bad Israeli cut them off of all these things. Meanwhile, Israel gave them water and they refused. Israel gave them food and they refused in favor of, I want to build missiles to launch at Israel. It's disgusting to me to see so much support for such a heinous group of people.
I guess we can move. This is turning into the Israeli hour, but
Well,
moving
I
on.
didn't mean for it to, but I mean, yeah. One last thing about that, because a lot of people are trying to make the distinction between the Gazans and Hamas. Hamas was elected. Hamas stayed in power because the people kept them in power. So having sympathy for anybody in Gaza at this point, except for those who were probably slaughtered for speaking out, like it's disgusting, it's meaningless, and it is a complete betrayal of our ideal as Canadians. It's a complete betrayal of our country.
Yeah, we've kind of drifted away from our previous role as peacekeepers to, I don't know,
Now we're
terrorist
warmongers.
supporters.
We're
Warmongers,
warmongers
yeah.
now. Really. All these people cheering to, continue sending aid to Ukraine and to Gaza, or elsewhere. Like, hey, let's take in Gazan refugees. Like, not sure that's a great idea because I bet you we're going to end up getting all the military-aged men like we did with the Syrian refugees.
The budget, it was released a couple of weeks ago. Christopher Freeland released it. I'm gonna go off memory here. Our GDP is 2.2 trillion. Our public debt is 1.2 trillion. Our budget is how the expenses of the government, federal level, are about 500 billion. And the tax revenue that we take in is causing a 50 billion deficit. So we're spending 50 billion more every year this year on the government than we bring in through taxes. I don't know. What are your thoughts on any of that?
I haven't taken a really good look at it because, I mean, I'm not a financial guy, but
Yeah.
I mean, even just
Okay, let me ask the question in a different way. I'm not an accountant either, but we're paying the interest alone on the debt that we have is $50 billion a year. So imagine we're a drug addict
Yeah.
and we've borrowed money to do more drugs than we can afford. And every year we're paying $50 interest on the money, just on the money we borrowed to do the drugs. Like, to me, like, we got to stop doing the drugs. Why
Yeah.
are we doing more
Yeah.
drugs?
Yeah. That's a lesson I learned in my life very much. So, but yeah, no, that's the thing. No, it's ridiculous. Like, what we're borrowing so much money, and yeah, okay, they can tell us what our GDP is, but I don't even think that's accurate because I mean they, from what I can tell anyway, just observationally looking at people who actually do know, is like even the inflation numbers are completely off. Like we're being lied to about all of the finances in Canada, and we should be probably paying more attention and probably get somebody to actually like go through everything and give us the real numbers. It would be great if we had somebody to do that, but I mean, it's ridiculous. We're spending like way more money than we even had to begin with. Our economy is honestly, it's kind of tanking. We got the only businesses open are the big corporations at this point. We got so many small businesses gone. But yeah, it's ridiculous to think that they're just like, oh well, we're just going to send more money away, send more money away. We're going to spend money on this project that's probably going to fall through. We're going to spend money on that project that's just never going to happen, or we're going to cancel it. And, you know, someone got rich off it. It's money going everywhere except where it needs to, which is back into Canada, back into the people that keep this country running.
I agree with what you said, that the only thing left are the big corporations. And it's almost like the PPCs, they're stepping into this vacuum, this void. They're like, guys, like, small businesses are getting wiped out. And small business, I don't mean just, some fuzzy, warm feeling thing that you say, like, we got to support the small business. No, like, somebody's a lawyer. They're an
Yeah.
independent business. Somebody's an architect, a sole practitioner. What do you call it? Like a doctor,
Yep.
private practice.
Yeah.
Like, all of these guys are wiped out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's very rare to find somebody like it's very rare to find stuff like that. I mean, heck, whole reason I haven't even got a haircut is because my barber had to close down. Like through COVID, she was moving from one from one location just across the road to another one, and then all through COVID, just everything gone. She couldn't afford it, couldn't do anything, couldn't move. All the prices went sky high for everything. So it's unfortunate. Like here in London, the amount of small businesses, you'll see one go up, and in 6 months it's done. If it lasts more than 2 years, they're a very lucky business, and that's just
I have a I have a theory that regulations, as they ramp up regulations,
yep.
they disproportionately impact small businesses. Like, you cannot wait 2 years to get your occupancy permit to open up a restaurant, but the big restaurants can.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on, and yeah, I had a thought and it just escaped me.
Welcome to the club. It's called getting old.
Yeah, and I'm getting the whites and grays to prove it.
Yeah, that's Trudeau will do that to you.
Yeah, and then
Let me ask you.
Pardon?
Sorry, Bradley. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just, as we're wrapping this up, what prompted you to not even get involved with the PPC, but what prompted you to wake up or get vocal, active? Was there a single moment?
I've always been pretty vocal about like what I see going on, like that the government's doing and whatnot. Like my parents hate me for it. They wanted me to start a podcast so I would just shut up and not talk to them about it because they don't want to deal with it. They're just we vote conservative. That's how we vote. So I mean, I've always been very outspoken about what I believe in, and very outspoken about the solutions that I think need to be offered, even if I'm not the most knowledgeable about all the intricacies of getting that done. But I don't know. decided I'm sick and tired enough of seeing all this crap go to all this beautiful country go to absolute waste and garbage and be completely destroyed. Just got pissed off enough that I was running my mouth. Well, not running my mouth, but somebody on Twitter decided they wanted to run their mouth, make a clever joke about. So I posted a picture of guy in a pool. He's surrounded by clean water, and everybody else in the pool is like sitting in their own piss, pointing and laughing at him. Some guy came along and was trying to be slick with his words. Was like, I made a comment about like PBC is the only one not pissing in the voting pool, and buddy's like, "Oh, why are you standing? Maybe you should take a seat." Oh yeah, you guys don't have one. I'm like, well, I prefer to stand, but I'll take a seat if I gotta. And from there, it just kind of, I got pissed off enough and like, you know what? Why the heck not? What the heck is the worst that could happen if I put in an application to try and run for MP? Like, what is the worst that could happen? I get told like, now you're not what we're looking for. Like, who cares? Like, I'm still supporting. I still want to be vocal. I just think I finally got to a point where I'm like, enough is enough. If you want something done right, do it yourself. Don't wait for someone to come along and save you. Don't wait for the right leader to come along. You know, find be the leader you want to see in the world. That's it. Like, see a need, fill a need. If there's nobody else doing it, then and you got the inclination, even just that, like for a split second, like, huh, maybe I should do that. If you got that thought, do it. What's the worst that could happen? It doesn't happen. Okay, you can never say you didn't try.
And Bradley, well, let's hope that you get approved as the candidate. Your application is still in process, and when you do, we'll hopefully get you back on the show.
Wait, that's very confident. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Payman. It's been an honor to be on the show with you.
Bradley, thank you very much for coming on.